Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. And today we have a great show lineup for you today. And the reason why I said good evening today, our first guest, she is joining us from the UK. And I know it's evening over there. And how cool is that, right? From the UK. So we want to thank her for joining us. She's going to share her wisdom on being stuck in your career. Do you feel that? Do you feel like you're stuck in your career? Do you feel you can do more, but you're kind of stuck? Well, she's going to help clarify that, how we can get above that little plateau that we always get in. Okay, let me say a little something about our first guest. From the UK, she's a top career coach. She runs a program called The 4 Fastest Ways to Advance Your Career. Okay, she says it has helped so many of her clients and believe it would benefit our audience, all right? And again, the listeners out there and the people in the chat room, we all may need a little push. We all may need a little help, or maybe we're talking to somebody, getting a little counseling from somebody, and they say something like the green light come on, and that's what she's good at, making that green light come on in that aha moment. Okay, 4 tips that she's going to talk about today is self-belief. Act as though you already are one step ahead. Set the right goal, and then take an action. Okay, so let's welcome to the show, without further ado, Ms. Meera Shah. Good evening, Meera.
Good evening. It's still morning
Welcome.
For you guys, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's 10 o'clock in the morning here, but that's all good. We're going to show you some love in the UK. We're going to thank you so much for calling in today. It's awesome.
And thank you for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here.
All right. Okay, before we get started, let's tell them who you are and a little bit about your business, please.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a background in the corporate environment. I've worked in financial services mainly and some FMCGs for a long time. I've been a qualified accountant, so really like the professional corporate arena. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to get into coaching. I've always been interested in personal development. So I did a coaching course and I set up a coaching company, and now career coaching is perfect because I can combine my experience with my passion, and I really nicely combine the two into a career coaching model with my personal experience on it. So I set up a business called, MeeraCareerCoaching.com.
Right.
I've developed a RID model, which I think you're going to probably ask me something about later. And at the moment, I run a program called The 4 Fastest Ways to Advance Your Career.
Let me ask you this, Mary. You just said earlier, 4 years ago, you got an aha moment to change careers, okay? So go back to that and share with us. What was that burning desire to make you say, I can do something and be even more successful at doing this? What was that aha moment? Something where you're reading something, where you're at a convention, where it just hit you, something bad happened? Bring us back to 4 years, that aha moment. Go ahead.
I tell you the truth, it wasn't an aha moment. So some people have aha moments. It wasn't an aha moment. I think for a long time, about 2-3 years before that, I knew that I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be an accountant. I didn't want to work in the corporate arena for the rest of my life. And I wasn't entirely happy with what I was doing. I wanted to bring some more excitement into what I was doing. So it wasn't an aha moment, but I started contracting and my jobs just got shorter and shorter, because after 3 months I'd be like, you know what, I'm just not happy, and I'd walk. And I was like, obviously I can't keep doing this. This is ridiculous. So I took a year out and I did the famous soul searching. So I guess it was something that was unhappy and driving me to that point. And I was a little bit ill, but not, some people get really depressed. I didn't have anything major. It was a natural unhappiness and, some slight, nothing, no real illness, just unhappiness, I would say. And because it didn't pass, it forced me to evaluate what I was doing. So my advice to your listeners is not everybody gets that aha moment. I think it's sometimes a little bit jazzed up and everybody waits for this big aha moment. It's not always like that.
Well, well said. But, I want to give you a congratulations because you felt and you realized that you were unhappy and you made a move. And a lot of things, I know in your coaching, you tell your people, your clients, to make the move if it's right. You calculate it, you make sure you just don't jump in all the time with, just 2 feet and don't look at the other end. But make a move, step out of that comfort zone a little bit because that's where you're probably going to find your greatness. So I think what you did, you knew you weren't happy, so you stepped out of your comfort zone, but you're planned, you're smart, you knew what you were going to do, and now you're probably more happy than you ever were in a career, and that's wonderful.
And that's absolutely right. You have to step out of your comfort zone, otherwise that comfort zone isn't actually that happy or that comfortable anyway. So
yeah. And now the 4 tips. Because again, I know we're going to go a little longer today, so I'll put some more stuff on the list to ask you. Let's talk about the 4 tips. Self-belief, act as though you're already one step ahead, set the right goal, and take an action. So go ahead and go over those tips if you could, please.
Yeah, sure. So really my first tip is all about the self-belief, and that's what my RID model is based on as well. And I really, really believe that the self-belief is really the biggest thing that makes a difference. Obviously, the action makes a difference, and the setting the goals make a difference. But without that self-belief, I just don't think there's any point doing the other actions. So first tip is self-belief. And what I mean by self-belief, some people call it confidence, I guess, or your internal state as well. So when you're feeling good, you believe you can do anything. You might not have the skill set, but if you put your mind to something, you'll go out and learn, you'll go out and ask, and you'll do it. Whereas if your internal state is unhappy or you're not feeling confident and they're very linked, you're just not going to be able to set the right goals. What you'll set is so small that it's just not going to make a big difference to your life. And I love this thing Paul McKenna says, and he always says, if you don't believe in yourself, why would you expect someone else to believe in you? And that really comes through in the way you behave, everything you say, everything you do. So I really say that self-belief is the biggest thing that I work with most clients. We work on that a lot. And I guess, and then on my tips are all about, obviously, I say to everybody, in fact, I would say to everybody now who's listening, just take a minute and just 1 out of 10, how confident do you feel right now, and how much do you believe in yourself right now, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest.
Everybody out there, just do that. Yeah, go ahead. Everybody out there,
everybody just do it. And just be honest with yourselves and the first number that comes in your head, really. And what I find is most people are not at a 10. Most people are probably lower than 5. And, so most people do recognize that they need to work on their internal state or their self-belief or feeling good. And then, of course, the next question I always get is, okay, thanks. Now you made me realize, I don't have great self-belief. Thanks. Now what do I do?
Right.
So, the ignorance is bliss has been broken. So, then a lot of what I do is work on the self-belief. And the first couple of sessions, obviously we set some goals and we talk about what we're going to do in the coaching. But I spent quite a bit of time just getting your internal state right, because then we can really talk about other stuff. And then it's so effective to do it that way, I find.
Mary, let me ask you this, because a lot of people talk about your internal self and get yourself corrected, and most people sit there and try to go and achieve that. But sometimes life gets in the way. So how can we get that state? Because again, we go talk to you, and you do such great things. Walk out of your office, we're fired up, we're excited, we're ready to go. But just like buying a car or something like that, then the life gets in the way, and then you kind of die down. How do we maintain that feeling? How do we maintain maintain that feeling we get when we talk with you? How do we do that?
Yeah, so it's a few things. Obviously, coaching is kind of a regular thing, so it's a journey. And I always say to people, it's like climbing a ladder. So initially, you put one foot on the ladder. You can continue climbing. You can stay there, or you can come off. And then, the next coaching session maybe pushes you to rung 2, pushes you to rung 3. The first few rungs, you can still climb back down, or you can get up. But what happens? Imagine if you're like over halfway up the ladder. Most people are not going to climb back down, so it becomes a new habit to think like that. It becomes a new habit to think positive. And what we equip with you is recognizing when life is in the way, and when you're not feeling that great state, then it'll definitely happen. You're right, because that's life. But we teach you to recognize it and have some tips and tools to quickly shift your state again and get you back in a good state. And it's that recognition and then some tools to get you back there that really helps maintain the momentum. The other thing also is what happens is if you've been unhappy or just kind of in that comfort zone for a long time, you forget what it feels like to feel good, to feel free, to feel like you can do anything. So even just feeling like that for a couple of weeks is like, wow, this is how I can feel, and it's that recognition.
Recognition. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're feeling pretty good now, and now we got a job or we got a career that we're doing, but we're not doing, and we think we can do better. We think we'll be better, but we're stuck. Okay, so that's the name of the show, Stuck in Your Career. So we're stuck in, Hollis, we're stuck in a career. We want to go to the next level. What's the first step that I and the listeners should do to get either change careers or get unstuck in this career?
Yeah, so I guess that's where you need to really evaluate. And really there's 3 things most people, I always get 3 things. So you have to understand why you're unhappy. Is it one, because you don't mind the career you're in, but you're stuck because you want a promotion and you're not challenged, so you need to be operating at a higher level and want a promotion? The other option is you just don't like what you're doing, so for example, I used to work in FMCGs, but I moved into banking, so that's what I would call a career change. So you still like the environment you're in, but you want to do it in a different setting or a different industry. So a career change is the second option. And the third thing is I just want to do my own thing, or I don't know what I want. And that's the famous career crossroad. And the career crossroad I get a lot. It's like, I hate what I'm doing. I want to work for myself. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know how. So you have to first of all recognize what's making you unhappy, but what you'd like to do. And then you start making a plan as to how to become unstuck. So you might get some quick wins to shift your state, like, okay, let's just get you a promotion or a new job. At least if you've been in a job for 10 years, let's just get you a new job that will change your energy and your vibe. And then we can think about longer term what you want to do. But it also depends on people's risk appetite, because some people like a lot of risk and they're like, I've had enough, I'm just going to quit and try something new. And some people have commitments and they're not don't have as high a risk appetite, so it's like, no, I'm going to stay here till I find the next option, or I'll dribble in the next option evenings and weekends till I feel comfortable. So it kind of depends.
I like you said that about taking options. I was going to ask you this. Some people may get so frustrated they just they just kind of quit and walk away and say, I'm going to do something else. What do you advocate? Because again, it can be rough out there where you sit there and just throw your hands up in the air and walk away. So would you talk to a client and say, okay, you got to do this first. If you can do something on your own, put the business plan together, make sure you have the funding together, this, or how do you discuss that? Because, do you have all those things in place first, or pick it in chunks, little by little, before they get ready? How do you
My advice is always the middle path. I never say quit one thing and go into another, and that's just based on my personal experience. But the big decision is what you absolutely mentioned, is the funding. So I'll say if you're going to start something new, unless you're just going for a new job, but even a new job is not guaranteed for a long time. So I always say if you're going to walk, then just don't expect to earn any money for 6 to 12 months. So can you sustain yourself? Have you got enough savings not to get stressed? Or do you have a support like a partner or some other source of income where you could really earn nothing for 6 to 12 months and you're going to be fine? And very few people have that luxury. Some people do, but, very few do. And so then I would say, well, if you don't have that luxury, it's equally unhappy and equally frustrating actually not having any money and not having a job on top or not having a business on top. And so it's like going from the frying pan into the fire. So we would really talk about, look, have you thought about, as much as you hate this, the grass isn't greener on the other side until you have a plan. And I would say, maybe see if you can do like a 3-day work week or a 4-day work week. And, then start having some time out so you can think and create some options. And if you're fed up, I just say, look, first go take a holiday, then you come back and then we talk when you're fresh. Because now you just want to walk, but that's just taking you from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah,
so I always go for the middle ground.
Thank you. Great advice. All right, so this is from your blog, and you say, one of the things you say is your career is an internal force. What do you mean by that?
I knew you were going to ask me about that. So that's fine. So what I mean by that is quite often, when people don't have a job or a job they hate, we often use that, or we're stuck, when we want a promotion, we often use an excuse to say, especially now in the last 2-3 years, there's a recession out there, the economy is bad, it's not in my control, so I can't change what I'm doing. So people stay unhappy for a long time, but they blame external market forces. And what I say is, no, you need to think that by internal, I mean it's in your control, and external, something that's not in your control. How you feel is in your control. How much confidence you have is in your control. What skill set you have is in your control. And whilst the market is tough, there's still jobs out there, and there's still, some opportunities out there. So if you resign yourself to a bad market, then you're giving up to external forces. But that's not true, because anyone who's hungry, you can see, what's going on, where the changes are happening. You get the skill set, you get the network, and if you're feeling good, it's all in your control. Yeah, it's harder, but it's still in your control. And the other tough thing is, when it is internal, then you can't blame anybody else. So if something doesn't happen, you're like, it's because I need to step up, or I'm not as shit hot as I need to be, or I'm doing something wrong. But you take that responsibility internally, and that's harder, but really I believe that strongly.
Hey, Mary, let me ask you this. I want to mention this. I just read this morning here in the United States, our country added 285,000 jobs to the nation. How is UK doing? Are you guys hiring out there well good? Is it getting stronger for the UK? Tell us how it's doing. And then add to that, what's it like if people over 50 come to you? What kind of advice do you start your own business? Or, again, if you're over 50, there's not a lot of jobs out there that are, quote, a great career job. You may get some entry-level stuff, so you may be overqualified. So what do you say to a person who's over 50 who comes to talk to you? Start your own job or keep on hunting for a career. Go ahead.
Yeah, so on your first point about the economy, actually in the UK we haven't seen any signs of improvement at all. And just today, in fact, in the news I read that the EU has said France is about to go into recession. So France is at risk. So actually for us, it's still unemployment and more recession news ongoing. I don't know which sector they've created your 285,000 jobs in, but no. So it's still bad. So I think it is tough, and we have to acknowledge there is a recession out there. No signs yet. So I don't know. I still think a couple of years it's going to probably carry on like this. Everyone's going to be really cautious. But on your second point about if you're over 50, then what advice I'd have. Again, it's not a generic brush advice. It's obviously case by case, and it depends on if someone is an expert in something, then they should use that. And maybe, then there are options. So I'll give an example. Say you've been an accountant in a company for years, and then you're just fed up, and, at 50 maybe you think, I'm just sick of this rat race, and either I want to work for my own or I want to change. But what you could do is, you've got all this experience, you could become freelance and you can start consulting or open up your own thing with all that experience. So there are options, and it just depends on what the person is looking for. But I guess the advice is really the same advice as I would give a young person. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. So in fact, It's even more urgent if you're 50 to do it. Because, otherwise 10 years later or 5 years later, it's going to get harder. And of course, the older you are, we know it's harder to change, and, we're more scared of change, and we have more commitments. So same thing at 50, I would say you need a plan to change. And if you don't do it now, you always regret it. This is kind of the now or never time to really do it.
Thank you. Meera Shah, everybody. Meera, if we want to contact you, we've got listeners out there who want to follow up with you. What's a good way to contact you? What email address or what website?
The website's the best way to contact me. My website's called www.meeracareercoaching.com. And actually, I run a program called the 4 Fastest Ways to Advance Your Career. But and I send out free tips and free newsletters on that. So I would say you sign up if you want. You should sign up to my free tips. It's www.meeracareercoaching.com/4ways. But it's also on the website. And if you sign up to that and you like what you read and you like what I have to say, it gives you a good flavor of what I'm about and what I say. And then from there, there's obviously a contact form, an email address. So those are really the best ways to contact me. And if you're in my database, then of course you get my updates on any newsletters or tips that I continue sending out. A question I always get is, if we're based in the US and you're based in the UK, how do we work together? So I'll just quickly answer it, because I'm sure people are wondering that. The main way really is either Skype or by phone, but Skype tends to be the way most coaching is done, even when people are in the same country or even in the same city now. Because what happens is you can be sitting in your room in your pajamas with a cup of tea, and you can just get really honest and comfortable about how you feel. But face to face, what happens is, you're really aware of the other person, you're aware of how you're sitting, you're waiting for their reaction, you're making eye contact, body language. There's a whole layer that you're aware of. Whereas if you're in bed, comfortable in your pajamas, all that's gone, and you can really just be honest about what's going on. And of course, the commute saves time. So Skype or phone really tends to be the best way. Most of the times, most of my clients, when we do Skype, they just say, I'm going to turn my video off because I just, I don't want to just look at each other and have to worry about that.
Yeah. I use Skype all the time, and the video I turn off too, because otherwise I say I got to put makeup on, so I turn the video off.
Exactly.
All right.
You're like, oh God, I don't want you to see what I'm wearing, or that I'm still in my pajamas. Yeah, exactly.
We're going to take a 1-minute commercial break, and we're right back. Meera Shah, everybody, from the UK. We thank her for calling in. We're going to take a break, and we're right back. So please ask her some questions. If you got some career tips, if you're stuck in your career, this is a great time to ask, okay? So into the chat room, call up, ask Meera Shah a question. We'll be right back with Meera Shah.
Children today are leaving organized sport at an alarming rate. 70% of youngsters between the ages of 8 to 12 years of age are hanging up their cleats. Fear of injury, like concussions, broken bones, that can dramatically alter their life's goals and expectations. Too much pressure placed upon them by parents, coaches, and peers. Burnout from playing or practicing sports far too often. Where do we as parents and coaches draw the line? We know that sports provides plenty of benefits, but too many coaches and parents take sports far too seriously, sucking the fun out of the game or trading it to win at all costs. You need to take a step back. Let them enjoy sports. Make sure they have a well-balanced schedule. Remember, they are kids that hold the key to the next generation of athletes and need to have had positive and healthy experiences from sports. They deserve to lead a normal life beyond the cheers of sport. I'm Dave Ferguson from BeyondTheCheers.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. We're here with our special guest from the UK, Meera Shah. Are you stuck in your career? Are you kind of a little nervous about getting started in another career? You think you're too young? You think you're too old in your career you have now if you want to make a move? Meera can answer those questions for you. She can help guide you and give you some tips, okay? Like I said before the break, she's got a newsletter. At least join her newsletter so she can get some tips, okay? Let her help you plan what you want to do so you don't feel alone. Because a lot of us feel kind of alone when we want to make a career move or make another big move like this. With Meera, she can help you, guide you, okay? And again, she's in the UK, but technology is wonderful. Okay, that's why she's calling. That makes it real easy. You can do it via Skype. You can do video if you want to. Or otherwise, do like me and just turn the video off and just do it. It is speaking, okay? So don't be shy about that. And plus, she can help you make a good decision. So when you make that career move, she's there with you, all right? Meera, we'll ask you this. Career advancement tip number 1. So say we are in a career that we do like. It's going okay. We want to get advanced. We want to get, there's no ceiling there. There's potential for advancement. How do we prepare ourselves for advancement? How do we get there?
Yeah, and this is the thing that frustrates me a lot is because most people I always feel either have undersold themselves or don't value themselves correctly. So, whenever I get people like that, I'm like, right, you need to value yourself better. And it's, obviously the reward shows what value you're placing and then somebody else places on you, I guess. That's how we value, we place value in this day and age. So what I would say is if you want a promotion, so one of my tips, that's actually my second tip, but what I say is act as though you've already got that promotion, because then your boss doesn't have to guess. There's a few things you can do, but then your boss doesn't have to start guessing what it would be like to promote you because they can already see, operate a few levels higher than your current role. So you're the natural next responsible person in the team. As soon as an opening comes up, let your boss know that you want that promotion. And if you're taking additional responsibility, speak up at management meetings, shine, network. Just show that you're already operating at a promoted level, so it's almost a surprise that you're not at that level, Yeah. So almost act before you have it, so that it almost becomes so natural. And the big thing there then is, dress the part, have the body language, speak up, do a bit more. So if your boss asks you for a piece of work, for example, maybe throw in some additional analysis, give him suggestions, all the management stuff. But the big thing to do all of that is the self-belief. Because you want to shine your light. In order to shine your life, you have to feel strong, you have to feel good, and you have to have high self-belief. Only then will you make that shift.
Hey, Meera, let me ask you this. You mentioned about you talked to a lot of people who frustrate you because they undersell themselves. Do you think a lot of that have to do with the recession now because people just need a job? So if that's the case, is it okay to undersell yourself in a career that you want to stay in just to get your foot in the door? Or is it a bad move to undersell yourself and it's something that you don't even want to be involved in? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's fine to undersell yourself as long as you're aware you've undersold yourself and why you've undersold yourself. So if you've been out of a job for a while, or it's just an in the meantime job, or it's a stepping stone into a company you really want to get into, I would argue and say, obviously, first fight for the value you think you can get and what you're worth. But if you can't, I think it's okay, but I think you need to recognize that I'm doing this for a more strategic reason and this isn't the value I place on myself. Then it's fine, That's okay, and you can almost let it be known. I had a job a couple of years ago where I took a pay cut. And it was because I wanted to get into all this bank mis-selling stuff that was happening, and I didn't have the experience. So when I went in, I'd let them know. I said, normally I operate at a higher level. I've taken a pay cut, but because I knew I didn't have this experience, I wanted to come in and learn. I've taken a pay cut, but I kind of let them know. I didn't let it knock my confidence.
That's great. That's a nice tip there. You're being confident. Yeah, you're being confident, and you let them know up front and something like that. And people appreciate you out there working, so that's good too. So I think it's easier to get hired or make a career move when you're in a career than when you don't have one. So that's great. Very smart. All right. Okay,
and of course, your state of mind is also better when you're in a job than when you're not. Yeah. So that also is helpful.
Very true. How are you marketing your business? How are you picking up new clients?
Okay, lots of different things. Yeah, a few different things. So I think Meetup is a really big thing that's happened in the UK. It's probably as big in the US, but I'm not sure. Is it?
Yes, it is.
It is as big, right? And I'm sure it is because everything starts in the US and then we pick it a few years later. It's always the way anything new you guys start and then we pick up the trend a bit later. So I run through Meetup. I run, something called a professional networking and career development club. So I do regular meetups and I give them tips. Or each time I talk about a different topic. So I'll do a 45-minute talk on different topics, and then it's also a chance for professionals to network and meet other professionals. But through that, if people like me, if they like what they hear, then obviously they then come and sign up with me. I'm on Facebook. I've got my database. I advertise in a few places. I go and give talks at different groups as well. So I don't know if there's things like the Yes group or interesting talks. Any motivational talks or any motivational group, sometimes I get invited to go and speak. So I use that as well. I'm not doing heavy advertising or anything, but that's obviously another way. What I do need to do, and I am in the process of doing, is writing an ebook and writing some programs for some webinars and some workshops. And that's probably why I'm a little bit quiet on the marketing front at the moment.
Gotcha. You network, okay? Give us some tips how to have a successful networking event. Here in Arizona, it's where we're at now, we can go to a networking event every day, multiple times a day, okay? But I want you to share with the listeners, I want to share with the other professionals out there how to have a successful networking event. Because, I got to a point where, I'm not going to every networking event that I'm invited to, and then I'm not talking to everyone in the room. Okay, so I'm trying to pin out people how we can win with each other. So give us some tips on how we can go to a networking event and make it successful or somewhat successful. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I guess you're talking not about running a networking event, but attending one and then
getting
value out of it. Yeah. So I used to do the same thing. So first of all, time is limited, and like you say, you could be networking all day, 7 days a week. So you have to be really careful about why you're networking. Be clear in your head about why you're networking. Networking for your business? Do you just want to increase your social circle? Do you just want a night out? That will help you pick the right networking event. So be clear why you're doing it. And then once you're clear why you're doing it, then look at the group that fits your bill. So if it's social, obviously find an activity you like. But because obviously we're talking about business and professional context, find a group that there will be a lot of similar people in the industry either you're in or you're interested in getting into. Read reviews of their past networking events, see the venue, see the number of people there, and then decide, are you good where there's a lot of people or are you better in a smaller group? And, pick it to suit your needs. But then, before you go to the networking event, what I always do is I look up some of the profiles of the people going, and you can easily do that on Meetup. And then I will actively, look for 3 or 4 people who I'm going to go and speak to and have something. So I'll actively have 3 or 4 people in mind that I'm going to go and speak to about something. And also decide, when you meet people, what are you going to say to them? If you're asking for something, then think about what you're asking from them, or even if it's a contact, why would they want to give you their contact? So think about the conversation you're going to have with that person, or the pitch as they call it, so that it's a win-win and someone's interested in you.
Hey, Mira, I'm going to change directions a little bit. I know I was reading your profile earlier before, and you're making career moves, you're making decisions. You're just going out there, like you said, your network, stuff like that. But I want to talk to you about this. I'm going to do this a little funny. Tony Robbins, the Firewalk, okay? Because a lot of us out here, we've heard about it. Some haven't seen it, some have seen it. And I don't know if you read it back a month ago or so ago. He was having a firewalk, and a lot of people got burned, literally burned. So tell us your experience.
Oh, I missed that piece of news.
Yes.
Where was that?
Okay,
was that in the U.S.?
That was in the U.S., and then it might have been Vegas or somewhere. But, yeah, it was a big thing where a lot of people in this firewall got burned. So please kind of lighten us a little bit and tell us your experience with Anthony Robbins' Firewalk.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I'm sure everyone's heard of Anthony Robbins. Anyone who's done anything motivational, he's obviously the champion and the king. So we just assume everyone knows who he is. And obviously his famous thing amongst many was the Firewalk. So Anthony Robbins is the kind of guy who you walk into a room and he's just got this amazing energy and he really believes what he says. And he's quite American, so you know what your Americans are like. You're quite jazzed and quite excited compared to the British way of speaking. So, he's quite jazzed up. It's a look in the mirror and pat yourself and say, I love you. We do not do things like that in this country. So, that's just a cultural thing. We might do it very subtly, but not in that big way. That's just a cultural thing, But anyway, he walks into the room and he's this big guy and, he can fly the ceiling off the roof. He's just got this amazing energy and passion. So his Firewalk, the whole reason for doing this Firewalk is to overcome your fears, your beliefs, stretch your comfort zone, lots of different things that you can achieve through the Firewalk, but it's mainly around all those things. Stretching a comfort zone, experiencing something new, and overcoming some fears. So he has a lot of trainers, and what it is the whole room, or pretty much half the room gets up, and he makes you feel like if you don't join that band, why are you even here? If you're not going to get up and do this Firewalk, why are you here? You're just a loser. Literally, he makes you feel like that. So the whole room gets up and you're like, okay, I'm not going to be the loser sitting here, so you get up as well. I'm surprised about the, people getting burnt, but what it is it's like a stretch of really hot coals. It's not burning fire, but it's red hot coals, and it's like a stretch of coals, I don't know, I'm not very good, maybe 2-3 meters long. Probably,
okay.
Whatever his health and safety has advised him. So literally before, you dip your feet in ice, and then you walk through the thing, and at the other end there's ice. And it's just mind over matter, and it's a really powerful experience because the whole thing, there's a whole prep around it. It's mind over matter, and you keep going, I can do this, I'll be okay. And then once you've done it, you're like, oh my God, wow, I can't believe I did that. And you just, feel so good straight away. Yeah. So anything that stretches you, imagine if you did bungee jumping, if you had fear of heights, any of those things, it's the same kind of rush you get. You feel so good for ages afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a Firewalk. Outstanding. I love that. Okay.
And I would just say to people, though, I think if you go to his Firewalks, they're like really expensive now. So he does have trainers who do it, which are like a little bit cheaper. Gotcha. And if you don't want to spend that money, just go and get another different kind of, listen to him on YouTube as to why you do it, and then go get a different kind of adrenaline rush.
There you go.
He would hate me for saying this, but anyway, there goes.
That's how it is. That's all right. Okay, so we come down to your RID model of coaching. Okay, this is your branded model. Okay, so share that with us, and this again, get us fired up. Get us ready to walk that Firewalk. Bring it to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the RID model of coaching is something I developed after working with clients. And it stands for the first stage. R is the reflect, I is the imagine, and D is the do. So the reflect is really checking out your internal state and making sure your internal state is good, it's strong, it's right, it's high before we do any goal setting. Because, like I mentioned earlier, if you're going to try and set goals when you're not feeling good, your vision of the world is small. Your vision of what you believe you can do is quite small. So when you feel good, you believe you can do anything, and you just set such a different goal. And I just don't believe in setting a goal when you're not feeling good. So a lot of the reflect is about your internal state and how you feel and getting that right. Then the second stage is the imagine. So the imagine is now the goal setting piece. So when you're feeling good, your goals will be good. But I always say the goal needs to be a little bit stretching. So stretching enough that it gets you fired up to jump out of bed to go and get that goal, but not so stretching that it feels so hard to get. It has to be within reach. So I almost say to people, imagine putting your hand up, and that's normally where you'd probably set your goals, the way you operate. Then imagine putting your hand up like another foot. You can easily stretch that. Most people can do that. And then your goal should be another foot, which is just a little bit out of reach, but almost reach. That's where your goal should be. That's where you imagine how much you stretch yourself. And then you're fired up, you've got this great goal. We've imagined what your life would be if you had this goal. So you're fired up to jump out of bed every morning. And then the do is the action. So then it's like, okay, forget about the goal, forget about the state. We've already fixed that. Now let's just go in action. We don't need to keep thinking about other things. It's now action, 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 action. And you just strike while you have the momentum and strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. And the fire should just make you want to do those actions anyway.
Hey, Mary, let me ask you this. Is every day when you get out of bed, is a certain routine you take? Because, when I do my show, when I do my show, I got my preparations I do to get prepared for the show and stuff like that and for you wonderful guests. And the last hour before the show starts, I'm a Michael Jackson fan, so I'm always listening to his music, getting ready to go, stuff like that. Are there certain little things that you teach that people can pick up? Because, again, that's my thing, that I don't answer the phone. I'm there. I'm getting prepared for the show. And then when during the week, if I got something big to prepare for and stuff like that, I may put Michael Jackson on too, put in my head, stuff like that, got little tips, little routines. Is there certain things that you advocate where we, as part, just from you, that can pick up, that give us motivated and get us excited? I said, I got a big meeting on Monday. Guess what? Before I go to the meeting, I'm going to probably Michael Jackson, prepared. What do you teach about preparing for a big event, big networking meeting, whatever?
So actually, I really like what you said. I think you can teach them based on what you do. I think that's fantastic. So it's shifting your state and getting yourself mentally ready, isn't it? Yeah. And zoning out. So you're focused, you're feeling good, you're not panicking, you're not flustered. So Michael Jackson obviously does it for you, and then, like you say, you switch off your phone and you just get into that good space. So anything that gets you to good space, I guess. So for some people, it might be just go take a little walk, a 5-minute walk before you go into a big meeting. Just clear your head, just take a deep breath. A 5-minute walk really can just shift your vibe. It's all about shifting. It's all about the state of mind. Sometimes I'll say, if it's a really big meeting, depends on the stress levels, but sometimes I'll say, look, just practice that meeting the day before. And then what you do is you visualize, just before you go into the meeting, you kind of imagine a more confident version of yourself, and we'll have maybe done a visualization exercise when we coach, or you can do it on your own. Doesn't matter. But you imagine a more confident version of yourself, right? So you imagine you're really confident, you walk into this meeting, and you imagine it to run exactly how you want it to run. You're dressed the part, you're contributing what you want to contribute. You might be leading or contributing, but it goes exactly how you want. Your tone of voice is amazing, what you say is articulate. You imagine, you play this scene a few times in your head. So you feel really good, and you can imagine what it feels like to do that. And then, just before the meeting, you close your eyes and you step into that more confident you, And when you walk into the meeting, you don't walk in as yourself. You walk in as that more confident you. So every time you feel like, ooh, my confidence is wavering, you're like, but I'm not me. I'm this great person. How would this great person think, behave, speak? And you then talk from that other person, which is quite powerful.
That's wonderful. That's a great tip.
Or you can almost step into someone you really like. So I don't know. We talked about Tony Robbins. So you can imagine that you step into Tony Robbins' body and you walk into that meeting. And then every time you think, oh, I can't say that, then you go, really? What would Tony Robbins be doing now? Would he be thinking, I can't say this? And, that should hopefully change your behavior.
Right. Very good.
But just feeling good is the main tip, Yeah,
having that spark, feeling good about yourself. And sometimes, because I've been reading too, sometimes don't concern yourself with the outcome. Because I've known people are desperate for a paycheck, desperate for getting that new client. They get desperate on the outcome. Don't look at the outcome. Just look at presenting yourself, present your best face forward, do the best work you can do. And the outcome is probably out of your hands anyway. So don't look at the outcome, because it'll take care of itself if you prepare well enough and you do well enough. And I'm real bad about being on time and being early. And I never can understand how people can go to a major thing and be late. You're so wired up because you're late, and now you got to be defensive and say, I'm sorry. I can't stand starting a conversation with, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. I can't stand that. So it's one where I'm always early. If I'm not an hour early to something, then I'm late, and then I get all flustered. So
those are two really good tips actually about don't worry about the outcome, and also you're right, because once you have to go in, you're flustered, and you have to say you're sorry, you lost the game already before you started.
Right. So
those
to me,
are really good tips.
No, thank you. That's why I do it. Because I'm a high school umpire too, and everybody knows I'm always there an hour early because I just can't. I get real flustered if I'm later in that. So I'm early. Relax. I'm bringing in the focus. Either I put my tune on, something like that. I'm bringing in the focus. That's come from playing ball. I'm teaching my son these things too. But playing ball, I played ball for a while as growing up, and you prepare, like you said, you visualize the whole game. I already visualize that I'm gonna have a good game. I'm gonna make a lot of tackles. I'm gonna make an interception. I visualize the whole thing, the whole outcome. So when it's game time, I'm ready to go. So that's
and
great.
And that works,
okay?
Does it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it really does. Okay. Hey,
and the other thing also I wanted to add to that I've started doing more recently is also just have fun. Just say, I'm just going to enjoy this experience. Everything is only an experience. And then you're like, I'm not going to be uptight or stressed. I'm just going to go in and enjoy this experience. And when you have fun and you decide to just enjoy the experience, like you say, without worrying about the outcome and just being your best, you can't go too wrong.
Excellent. We're down to the final comment, and I want you to leave everybody thinking, because nobody knows you. Well, we got a good taste of what you are, and you were wonderful for 45 minutes. Thank you so much for going long. But I want you to let people know, what does Mira want to be remembered for professionally? So 10 years down the line, you've done a great career, but you're going to hang it up and hit the beach and kind of relax. What do you want to be remembered for professionally?
I think what I'd like to be remembered for is that I help people find, acknowledge, and be rewarded for their true worth. So really, it's helping people find their true worth, then them acknowledging their true worth, and then being rewarded for their true worth. And that's really what gets me going with what I do, because when all those three things happen, people's spark is present and they're just happy, and that for me is what I would like to help people with.
Thank you so much. Hey everybody, we had a great show with Mira Shaw. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to send you a little email after the show because we do a little thing, something extra for our guests, okay? So thank you so much from the UK. You go ahead and have some dinner. You have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you real soon, okay?
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been really fun.
Thank you. It's been great. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Hey, that's our first guest. Again, she's calling in from the UK. How cool is that? I love that, okay? I have a few guests in the UK and stuff, so it's always neat to have them talk. They can come hear their accents. That's always great and fun. Our next guest, all right? And I'm going to say this, I'm going to try this right now. I'm going to try and get out of the way. Our next guest, she's here to talk about some stuff, too. Her name, Henriette Chappelle Hammond, okay? I kind of busted up the name, but I want to get that out of the way because this is a hard name, and I apologize to you already, okay? But don't go anywhere, guys. Come right back to the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio and see our next guest.
When was the last time you checked your vehicle's tire pressure? This is ASC Certified Auto Tech Pam Oaks, wanting to let you know that tire pressure is one of the key elements to getting optimum fuel economy. Keeping the proper amount of air in your tires ensures top MPG, or miles per gallon. And did you know that tire pressure directly affects the way your vehicle handles while you're braking or steering? Choose a day on the calendar, say the 20th, and have your ASC certified technician adjust the tire pressure each month. As a matter of fact, have the tech top off the fluid levels at the same time. This quick check will not only save you money on fuel, but may prevent major repair, and this service should be free. If not, you need to find another shop. I'm Pam Oaks, and this has been your Automotive Minute for today. Let me teach you how not to fix your vehicle in the driveway, but how to have your car or truck repaired properly by an ASC certified technician. Car care for the clueless, making you a savvy car consumer.
Hey, welcome back to the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. Again, our next guest, she's here, she's waiting in the wings, I love it. She is an author. Okay, her new book she's going to talk about, The Story Lives, Leading a Missional Revolution. Her background includes business coaching, Strings Finder Coach, I'm not sure what that is, so she'll explain that, nonprofit leadership, getting Christians out of the church and into the community volunteering, and pastoral ministry. Her book focuses on the need for Christians to know themselves so that they can live attractively in the community. Most Christians die without ever introducing anyone to God, claim to love and worship. She can talk about that, okay? So it's going to be a little bit religious, but not too much so, all right? We got to cover all bases in this on our show, so that's what's cool. So, again, let's welcome to the show a special guest, Henriette Chappelle Hammond. Hello, and sorry for your name. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
You know, I was listening in on the first guest, and let's not start with an apology. That's a good thing, right? So it's a hard name, but from a marketing perspective, that's great.
Beautiful name, yeah.
So it's all good. So we'll just go with the first name, Henriette. Not so difficult.
Henriette. Okay. There you go. Introduce yourselves and tell us about your new book you got out, please.
All right. Yes. Well, I was born in the Netherlands, so just across from England. So it was great to hear your British guest. And I moved to the United States when I was 16 years old. Moved to California, lived there for 14 years, and now live in the Seattle area. I have a business background. I have a degree in marketing from Santa Clara University and was in public relations for a while, and then God definitely led me to pastoral ministry and have been doing that for several years now, actually, since 1989. And in that process, I've really just discovered that the business part of me has been alive and well. And so over time, I have just felt more and more that my job and focus is really more on the outside of the walls of the church than the inside of the walls. And one of the things that I love to do is work with business people, help them figure out how they are wired. So using two assessment tools, one StrengthsFinder and one Myers-Briggs, and to help people figure out their personality so that they know who they are, what they're naturally wired to be good at, so that they can really become all that they were designed to be. And that works with Christians and non-Christians, obviously. But for Christians and in the church, one of the things then I do is help them figure out what their unique design is for the purpose of God's kingdom. So not only in their work life, but in their whole life, including their spiritual life. So that's a little bit about me and about my book. It's called The Story Lives, as you said, and it's really all about helping people understand and then live out that they have a unique story, and how we each have our story, we're the only ones that are exactly like us. There's no one else like you, no one else like me, and that's true for everyone. And so if that's true, then wouldn't it behoove us to be our best self and to choose to live our story in such a way that it makes a difference. And if you're a Christian, you really want to live your story in such a way that it makes a difference based on who God made you to be. So that's what The Story Lives is about. Figure out what's your story, where do Christians live their story, how did Jesus live his story, and what does that mean for us, and how can we live our story so that it has maximum impact in the world.
Hey, Arnett, let me ask you this. Back when you started, back when you got your moment where you combined church and business, was there a little backlash in your church about because again, sometimes when I go to church like that, I know they're looking for the donations to church and stuff like that, but all of a sudden when you bring up business and creativity and stuff like that, all of a sudden you get like, well, no, we're in church, we don't do that. How did you overcome some of the little backlash, and how do you get them to accept the fact that it's a good thing to combine these two? It was a good thing. Go ahead, because I always thought about that when I have pastors on and they're doing, maybe written a book or doing some business stuff, and different answers from each one of them where they got a little backlash and this and that, but they all made them understand this is a good thing. How did it happen with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, when I first left business to go into the church world, I wasn't really introducing church principles other than that how I approached publicizing events and how I approached running ministry was on a zero-based budget. I didn't look to spend money I didn't have, because from a business mindset, you're either making money or you should be breaking even, but you shouldn't be losing money. And I found that was a very foreign concept in the church world, which I always thought was mystifying, because I didn't really understand how, if we're supposed to be good stewards, why it wouldn't be a good idea to manage God's money well. Yes. So that was one place where I saw a difference in how I thought and how other people thought, but there wasn't a real backlash because people actually liked that I was able to manage the money well. Then over time, as I started seeing, especially because I resonate with business people and I understand how they think and I understand their world, what it was more for me is that I started seeing that business people really don't have much of a fit in the church. We don't know what to do with business people in the church. So if you don't fit in a standard ministry, if you don't want to teach Sunday school, or you don't want to lead a small group, or you don't want to usher, or you don't want to be on the worship team, or you don't want to be on the board or on the finance committee, then basically we have nothing for you to do. And part of my passion really behind this whole book and behind the ministry that I was trying to launch was the whole concept that, as business people, God wired us for business, but that's not just for outside the church. That's to benefit his kingdom, and that is a great mission field as well, so that we need to deploy our business people to do what they do best, and maybe not inside the church, but outside the church. And rather than making them feel that they either have to get in the church box and do churchy stuff, or there's no place for them, why not unleash them to say, wow, if you're wired to run an organization successfully or whatever, make that your mission out there, and let's celebrate the impact you're having in the world. And that's really, I had some backlash. As I started doing this, the church didn't know what to do with me. And so the reality was that I started focusing outward, not because I was against the church, but just because it just highlighted that this is true for all business people, that there isn't a really good place. But that doesn't mean we don't belong to the family of God or that we shouldn't be going to church. It just means that we need to think differently. And why not use our entrepreneurial gifts and skills not to fix what happens on a Sunday morning, but to find new ways to be Jesus to people in the way that God wired us. And so that's really where my focus started to be. So rather than fixing something that maybe doesn't need fixing or isn't going to be fixed, why not channel our energies into the direction they ought to go? Because there's people who are looking for God. They may not come to church. They work at our companies. We interact with them as our vendors or as our clients. Why not be good representatives of Jesus in everything we do as we do our business well? And that's really how I've resolved the sacred-secular divide, if you will.
Yeah. Andrea, you made a good point that I love, and I try to express that with some groups I'm talking to, is that let them do what they do best. You know, because they said, again, some people do certain things, and some of the things you'd have at church may not make them feel comfortable, but they have skills. You know, let them do their skills, because, again, it always mystified me when, if an organization that asked me for money, let's us help them figure out how we can create money. You know, I was in an upsetting way, but so it was just so strange to me. All of a sudden, you couldn't be creative and bring money into the organization, but they want money from you. That doesn't make sense to me. So but again, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get to that soapbox. It's not going to be because I can go crazy. But so that always confused me. Is where you're asking me for money, but you're not letting me help you create a cash flow to bring money into the church. I would love to do. You know what I mean? That's what was my thought. So, but I think your attitude is wonderful. It's like we got people with talent and skills out there. Let them do what they do best, and they can help the church. I love that.
Yep.
And that's why the group I'm talking to now is like, because you get in some certain organizations, a lot of MMs, they want you to join, and also they want to brainwash you of everything you did, and they're thinking and talking just like that. It's like, wait a second. You know, I got skills before I got here. I just chose to work with the organization, so I got skills. Why erase my skills? Let me do what I do to bring money and build my group. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things to say in the book is that we shouldn't have people park their best self at the door when they come into church. I mean, that's backwards, right? If that's how God wired you, the God of the universe certainly knows what he intended. So if he wired you, if he created your personality, your strengths that way, then they're meant to be used that way. They're not meant to be put in a box or checked in at the door when you go to church. And actually, every chapter in my book starts with a story, which makes sense, right? Because it's called Story Lives. But chapter 2 starts about a story of an entrepreneur and CEO of a small manufacturing business who was struggling with exactly that, where he ended up trying everything in church, ended up, doing parking lot duty on an Easter Sunday morning when he is a successful entrepreneur, and just in the story finds ways. I mean, it is based on a person that actually finds ways to use that to benefit God's kingdom, just not necessarily on a Sunday morning. And if we can just start thinking bigger, that would help a lot.
For your book, was that something you started planning to write your book, or was it a moment in your life where you said, let me write a book? Let me write a book and put it out there, something like that. Was there a moment where you go, I can write a book, or you always knew you wanted to write a book?
I've always wanted to write. I wrote my first little story when I was like 3 or 4 years old, but I remember I still have that story. It was just about the cat and the dog, but in 4 lines, but still. And I have tried over the years. I have started many books, but never completed them because I like writing, but I didn't have that burning passion for the one message. More just love communicating the truth about God's Word and just helpful things for people. But this message really started resonating with me after I went to Fuller and I did a missional ministry degree in leadership, and combining my pastoral skills and my leadership passion and my business background, that's really when I felt like this is a message that needs to be heard. So at that point, it really was, I need to write that book. and that's when the book was completed, because the others all are like a chapter here or 3 chapters there. But this book, I completed it before I submitted it to a publisher because I knew that this is a message that God had for me to share.
Very good. So people listening out there, she finished the book because she had passion. She was doing what she was doing, so she knew the whole story, and she got passionate about it, and she did it and completed it. Okay, so I ask a lot of authors this. So you had passion, and then passion made you finish that book. So what's harder now? What's harder now? Marketing that bad boy, get it out there, and so why? And give us some tips how you get it out there.
That is kind of one of the secrets, I think. Not real secret, but I mean, authors, before you're really an author, before you're a published author, you have no idea what kind of marketing is ahead of you. And so that is actually difficult because it's a catch-22. Without a platform, if you aren't like if I was a pastor, the senior pastor of a church of 20,000, marketing my book wouldn't be that difficult, because right there, every Sunday morning, I have 20,000 people that I'm talking to, right? But if you don't have a platform, if you're not already a really well-known speaker, or you don't have a gigantic network, it is complicated to get the word out. And so you kind of need to be someone to get your book sold, but you need a book to become someone that gets the book sold. So it's a really interesting dance. And so I think it is just like with everything. One of my favorite business / leader people is Jim Collins, and he wrote Good to Great and Built to Last. And in Good to Great, I believe, but in one of the things I heard him talk at, he's talking about getting the flywheel to move, and that at first it's just really hard work. You have to consistently apply the effort to get that flywheel to move, and it just is consistent and disciplined and ongoing, and eventually it'll start to move, and the next turn will still be difficult, and the turn after that is difficult, but eventually that flywheel just keeps moving. And so my belief is that if I keep working steadily toward getting the word out, because I really believe that this is a message that I've been given to share, that eventually it will gain that momentum and it will more or less start taking care of itself. But it really requires daily investment in some kind of fashion, whether that's through social media, whether it's through Blog Talk Radio, whether it is by personal appearances, any of that stuff, writing articles, whatever you need to do. And sometimes life gets complicated and you can't do all the things that you know you need to do, but it doesn't mean you give up. You just get back on the saddle and do it again. Back in the saddle.
Look, I was going to ask that in that next point I got off your thing. It says, Jesus told us while we are in character training, we will be pushed on every side some days. You just want to not give up, or you want to give up, okay? But he's saying, don't give up, all right? So what does Henriette do when you have days where you just want to say, oh, I just can't do this anymore? So what is your process? How do you process that? Help us process that so we don't give up.
Well, for me, one of the things is that there's a couple things, and I don't know necessarily do them in the same order each time, but they're components. One is to make sure you practice a certain amount of self-care, because beating yourself up when things aren't going well is completely destructive and not helpful. It doesn't help you get back up. It just keeps you down. And so I think one of the things is that if you just can't do it today, and you need a day off where you either sit in the sun, and you go have lunch with someone, or you go for a walk, or you do something to care for yourself, that is not a bad choice. That is a good choice. But that's not the main choice. For me, the main choice is to get back to connecting with Jesus and spending just time in his presence. And I know that might sound, kind of mystical or whatever, but it really isn't. It's just sitting down and stopping working, and we're stopping running around because we tend to get frantic when things go bad, and just stop and just pray. And maybe the only prayer is, Jesus, help me, because there's nothing else you can say because you're so distraught, or something is so bad. Or maybe it is just pouring your heart out. Maybe it is writing it in a journal and just writing out what's happening and asking God to speak into it. For me, it also includes reading something in the Bible. It doesn't have to be hours, but something, like even just a few verses in a few lines in one of the books, like Psalms or something in the New Testament or whatever. But so it has those components for me. And then the other thing is I reach out to my network of my support network to pray for me when I am struggling, because we are not designed to do it alone. And one of the things we tend to do, and this happens in business, and this happens in all leadership, this happens in business especially, it seems like, but it also really happens with pastors, because we don't really want to let people know that we don't have it all together, because that could affect our image or our bottom line or something like that. We tend to isolate. And there's a saying out there that is that Satan isolates us to assassinate us. And so isolation is a very dangerous thing. And we need to stay connected with a core group of trusted people that we can reach out to for prayer, for a word of encouragement, for support in some kind of way. Because if we try to go it alone, we will, if we plan to go it alone, we will plan to fail, because we're not designed to do it.
Hey, Andrea, let me ask you this. This is very powerful what you said about reaching out for help. With macho guys, and maybe some people just feel embarrassed because maybe, quote, they're failing or not doing as well as they should be doing at this point in time in their lives. How do we subside the ego and reach out and say, I need help? Give us, how do we start that process? Because you're right, we can't do it alone. But you probably heard so many guys and so many people sit there and try to do it alone because of their ego. Oh, I'm feeling it. I'm kind of embarrassed to tell everybody no, they're not doing well. What do we do? How do we do that?
Well, if you have some people in your circle of friends or family that you know cares about you and can be trusted, isn't the town gossip or anything like that, then just reaching out and say, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I buy you lunch? And just say, I need to share something. Would you be willing to hear? That could be one step. If that's too scary, even just sending someone a text or an email, if that's safer. For some, because you might be a known person or the people in your sphere are just not the right people, it might pay to look outside of that sphere. There are Christian groups, like here in the Seattle area, there's a Christian business group called Kairos, K-I-R-O-S, and they meet monthly. And these people all just come together for that fellowship and are available between meetings. I also belong to locally C3, which is also C as in the letter C and 3 as in the number, which is here in the Seattle area. But there's like Pinnacle Forum groups, different places because C3 spun off from Pinnacle Forum. There are Christian business people's groups that might be safe to connect with, because maybe you need to go outside of your network to be able to have that sense of anonymity if you need to just feel like this isn't going to come back to bite me or something like that. You could also find some of those groups online. Like your previous guest said, and we can do everything on Skype. You could reach out to someone that's somewhere completely far away in one of these groups and say, I just need to talk. It doesn't really matter where you start. You can go to a pastor of a church you don't go to. It doesn't matter where you start somewhere. And here's the lie we believe, and I'll tell you the lie and then I'll tell you the truth. The lie is that if I share with people what's really going on, I will be rejected, or they will look down on me, or it will come back to bite me. That's the lie. The truth is, if you let people in the process of what you're going through and allow them kind of a peek inside, they will actually be there for you, because most of us jump at the chance to be helpful to someone else, and we don't tend to judge people when they are in need of help. And most people are relieved to find out that you're not perfect, but that you have problems also, because they themselves were hiding their problems from you because you looked so together. If you had it all together, they couldn't be real with you. So it is often the greatest gift. So if your ego gets in the way, if you think of it as you are actually giving someone else a gift of the truth that not even you have it all together, that can be tremendously helpful, because I have found that my relationships have grown deeper and more intimate in a healthy way because I've become more real. I've been transparent for a long time, but in these last few years, because of really difficult personal issues, God has led me to become vulnerable, which means letting people in while you're still working through it instead of after you've figured it all out. And it has grown my relationships. It has grown my support. It's just been amazing. So I didn't realize there was something different, that transparency and vulnerability weren't the same, but it's just an amazing thing. And I have never found that if I shared with people in a genuine manner, with safe people, that they turned on me. If anything, they've become my best friends and biggest supporters.
Hey, Andriette, I get goosebumps just hearing you talk about that and being open and transparent like that, because that, as humans, that's probably our biggest problem right there, is trying to be transparent, especially in your eyes, in our own eyes, if we kind of quote fail and stuff like that. So to hear you say that, it's unbelievable. It really is, and it's very powerful there. So listeners out there, that's amazing tip. It's a wonderful tip you just gave us and stuff like that. Being more transparent, reaching out to someone you feel is worth reaching out to is very important to our lives to get us next level. Hey, we're going to take a break. Before we go take a break, though, please tell us, how do we contact you, and how do we get your wonderful book?
All right. You can contact me directly at Henriette, that's spelled Henriet, at thestorylivs, all one word, thestorylivs.com, or go to thestorylivs.com, and there's a contact me there.
Very good. We'll be right back with Henriette on the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. 1 minute.
Children today are leaving organized sport at an alarming rate. 70% of youngsters between the ages of 8 to 12 years of age are hanging up their cleats. Fear of injury, like concussions, broken bones, that can dramatically alter their life's goals and expectations. Too much pressure placed upon them by parents, coaches, and peers. Burnout from playing or practicing sports far too often. Where do we as parents and coaches draw the line? We know that sports provides plenty of benefits, but too many coaches and parents take sports far too seriously, sucking the fun out of the game or trading it to win at all costs. You need to take a step back. Let them enjoy sports. Make sure they have a well-balanced schedule. Remember, they are kids that hold the key to the next generation of athletes and need to have had positive and healthy experiences from sports. They deserve to lead a normal life beyond the cheers of sport. I'm Dave Ferguson from BeyondTheCheers.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. Our special guest is Henriette. She's talking from, again, very powerful stuff she's sharing with us today. So I want the listeners out there to really follow up. This is really important to me to have you follow up with her and talk to her about her book. And again, if you want to reach out to her. Okay, because a lot of us, most of us, are suppressing something. Maybe because we're embarrassed, maybe because our egos is when it comes to that. Reach out. Like you said, be transparent, let the walls down, because it may just turn your life around, and really may turn your life around. Henriette, let me see. The Peace Recipe. Rejoice, focus on Jesus, ask and give thanks. So go ahead and talk about that a little bit, okay? I know that's very important to you, very powerful to you, so go ahead and break it down for us.
Yeah, okay. I think that we all struggle with things and deal with anxiety, and we tend to focus on the negative, and we can rehearse that, which then grows the anxiety, grows the fear, grows the stress. There is a way out. Bible tells us very clearly in Philippians 4:8 that the key to reducing our anxiety and getting peace is to focus on what is good, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. And so I believe that that recipe is, first of all, rejoicing in who God is, praising God, praising Jesus, praising the Holy Spirit. I believe in the Trinity, and really just putting the focus on the big God. When I feel overwhelmed by my life, sometimes just looking at how big the blue sky is. When it's blue here, we tend to really look at it because it's not always blue here in the Seattle area. Or just how tall trees are, or how amazing the mountains look, or whatever, wherever you live. And you realize how little you are compared to how big that is. And then you realize that God is bigger than that. Then it becomes easy to praise Him, and it makes you realize that whatever you're dealing with isn't that big. And that helps. And then focusing on Jesus, just adjusting your attitude and directing your eyes on Him. He has promised that if you know Him and have asked Him in your heart, if you are a Christ follower, that He will never leave you or forsake you. That all authority on heaven and earth has been given Him, and that He promises to be with us even to the ends of the earth. So there's nothing you can go through as a Christian where Jesus isn't right there with you. And so focusing on Him in the midst of tough times or anxiety can be incredibly helpful. I'm not good at picturing things, but some people are. Picturing looking in His eyes, or picturing Him holding your hand, or whatever, or even carrying you when it gets tough, or slapping you on the back, or whatever, in a good, positive way. And then asking, simply telling God what you need, what's bothering you. You don't have to explain it. Sometimes how people pray kind of cracks me up because they go and explain everything to God. And it's kind of funny because it's almost like they're imagining God going, really? I had no idea. He's the God of the universe. He knew it before He made the world. So just asking, saying, God, you already know what I'm going through. Please help me with this, or please do this, or whatever. Just simply telling Him, letting it, just letting it out. He's the safest person to share with. We also need to share with human beings, but we also need to share with God. And then give thanks. Thank God for what He's already doing. My son was struggling with some really serious issues because of choices he made in his life, and I was heartbroken over them. And I was really pleading with God, and I was often at this place where I just felt like, how am I ever going to get through this? And one day, as I was pacing up and down my driveway, praying and crying, God just kind of put this in my head, that my prayers had already been answered in the future. That it wasn't that they weren't answered. It was just that I was still living toward the answer. And so the idea of giving thanks to what God has already done, the answer you're already living toward, is amazing, because then you can thank God for what He's done. Thank God for the victory. Thank God that He's already solved the issue, solved your circumstances. That doesn't mean we know what the answer is, but just knowing your prayers have been heard, your prayers have been answered, and you're living toward the answer God has for you, which is ultimately the best answer, is immensely anxiety reducing. It gives peace when you know, this is already done. All I'm doing is living toward it. It's like walking down a road. You see the horizon. It's not like the horizon is a phantom until you get there. You see it and you're walking toward it. And just giving thanks in that manner, saying, I'm walking toward that answer. I can't make it out yet, but I see where I'm heading. It's just a tremendous, it gives tremendous peace.
Let me ask you this. You said what you're living towards. Okay, so that means that, do you mean that if you're struggling right now, you could continue to struggle, or things are going to open up for you, or can you make adjustments, little tweaks as you go along? Can you explain that more to us?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It doesn't mean give up and stay in your circumstances. I mean, you pray, you make your own best decisions, you ask God to show you. At the same time, you keep walking. But the ultimate thing, like, if you're dealing with something that's completely beyond your control, that's very, very difficult for you, there might be things that you can do, but there might be a lot of things you can't do. So do the things you can do the things you already know how to do. Like if you're in debt and you're really struggling, well, then you know that you need to start spending less and start, making payments toward the debt reduction and or try to get a job. You do what you need to do. But there are things that you can't possibly do. You can't make yourself get the job. You can go through the process and apply for jobs, but you can't force anybody to hire you. That ultimately is out of your hands, right? You do what you can, but then there's stuff that you can't do. So the stuff that you can't do is kind of that answer to prayer. God will answer it. You're not going to stay in this spot forever. You're not going to be miserable for the rest of your life. So thank God for what he is doing in the situation. Thank God that he is going to provide because he promises to. Thank God that he will give you a job or will solve it in another way if that's not the answer. And then live toward that, even though you can't see what that is. In the meantime, though, you don't sit at home and wait for God to deliver the job offer via Federal Express, even though you haven't done anything to get the job. You have to do your part. But that ultimate thing that is beyond your control, you can't control the cancer going away. You can't control a child leaving drugs behind. You can't control any of those kinds of things, right? Those are the things you pray about. You know that God is going to answer your prayers. You live toward that answer, thanking him for what he is going to do because he promises that he works in everything for our good if we love him and are called according to his purposes. So I think it's a both and, Hollis. It's like we need to do our part. Don't stay down in the dumps. And we trust God to answer our prayers, and we thank him for what he's going to do.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. You're such a lifting guest today, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. We love it very much. It's good. It's great going into the weekend with your positive thoughts and your beliefs and stuff. So it's really nice to have this on today and bring it into the weekend because we've always had situations, where things aren't the greatest. So we need what you have to offer today. We'll have to say so. Thank you. My next little comment is because I got it off your blog. What is making you anxious? What is keeping you up at night? Where do you struggle without peace? Okay, so these are all little comments you can kind of share. What's making you anxious? So probably in your thought is if you're making yourself anxious, maybe pray for it. Or what's keeping you up all night? Pray for it. Kind of add to that, okay? Because we're anxious about something. We all stay up nights. I've had weeks where I get 3 or 4 hours of sleep because I got things in my mind just can't stop. Mm-hmm. How do we just kind of handle that so we can be positive? And then I get out of bed, I'm exhausted because I only slept like 2 hours. You know what I mean? So it's been where how do we put that together where we can be a constructive person in the community the next day? How do we help that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and sometimes, there are just going to be days, right, where our best efforts aren't going to help and we are still going to feel anxious. And I think one of the things I've discovered over time is that there are two different things. There is the feeling of fear and anxiety, and there is the doing of it. Maybe we can't control that we feel it, but we can do something about living that out. So if I am feeling afraid or if I'm feeling anxious, I can just acknowledge it. I can pray. I can take myself for a walk. I can do some things, but then I can choose not to be anxious. I can choose not to live there. That may not make the feeling go away right away, but the feeling will go away eventually if we refuse to give into it in the sense of allowing it to run everything. And if it's the middle of the night, and I find that fear and anxiety is much bigger in the middle of the night than it is during the day. When daylight always makes things look different. And what I do when I can't sleep is I will try to relax and think about other things. If that doesn't work, I will pray and hope that I'll fall asleep. If that doesn't work, I get up. I get up and either make the list, put it down so that I can stop thinking about it, or I work a little bit on it until I'm tired enough to go back to bed, or during really painful times in my life, I just read the Bible until I'm calm, because sometimes it's just a word that comes out of that, a word or phrase, or just the assurance that God says, I see it, I got it, don't worry. And it's not don't worry, be happy. It's don't worry, trust me, I've got a good plan. But that doesn't mean we can't work ourselves up. We can. And I don't know that anybody is able to permanently avoid that, but we can just make wise choices in the process. And staying in bed and stressing ourselves out, trying to force sleep, is probably not the best choice. Getting up and having, a cup of tea or drink some milk, or writing down what concerns us, because oftentimes it's just stuck in our mind. And if it's written down, we know it's safe and we can leave it for morning.
Andrea, it's wonderful. Come down to the end. We want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us. You give us such a positive weekend. Before we get to the last comment, please tell us how we follow up with you and how we get your book.
Well, again, follow up with me by emailing me, Henriette, HENRIET, @thestorylivs.com, or visit my website, thestorylivs.com. And if you don't need to follow up with me and just want to buy the book, they're available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The Story Lives, Leading a Missional Revolution.
Yeah, we know what your passion is. We know what you do when you're down. You need to pick me up. Okay, so but share with us a little kind of other stuff there. My final comment, I think you saw it. What activity could you do all day without getting bored? In closing.
What I could do all day without getting bored is talking to people and discussing things that matter. Especially my passion is to help people grow spiritually and heal emotionally. And so just talking about just ways to improve their life. And I'm not saying that to say that. I'm really not a person with hobbies. I just love seeing the light go on and helping people to figure out the next thing. I could do that all day. And then when I'm really tired, I like to watch TV.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Positive. Feel good. Okay, so thanks from all of us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, again, like I said, I'll send you a little email after the show because we do a little something for our guests for coming on. Okay, so thank you so much. You have a wonderful weekend, and I know you will. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining the show today. It was awesome. Our guests were, please follow up. We had two great guests. Follow up, okay? And like I always say, we'll see you next time on the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. What a great day it was, okay? Follow up with those people. Get their books. Use their services. That's awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week on the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. I'll see you next time.